Shalom, Hebrews. In this part 2, we're going to be getting deeper into 2nd Esdras. We're going to be covering 2nd Esdras 13, 40 through 50. And we're going to go into details. And I'm going to show you proof from the scriptures that these 10 tribes that a lot of these camps are preaching or teaching to their congregation, telling them that these Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, Cubans are Israelites, is a lie. And I'm going to show you from the scriptures it's a lie. Now, I would encourage you to watch the first part. If you haven't seen the first part yet, go ahead and watch that so you can get a basic foundation of what's going on. And in this part, you'll get a better understanding because we're gonna go into a lot of scriptures, some precepts, and we're going to show you from the Word of God that the Bible does not lie. And later on, we're going to talk about where this false tribe chart came from as well too. But I want to make sure I give you a much better understanding on the 10 tribes, the northern tribes, and where they really went according to the scriptures. So we're going to get into that. Before we get into the scriptures, Hebrews, I just want to say this. We are living in the last days. We're literally at the brink of World War III. The nations are going crazy. Everything that the Bible has prophesied is happening right before our eyes. I mean, this thing can happen so quickly. You know, Revelation chapter 6:14 says, "And the heavens departed as a scroll when it is rolled together, and every mountain and islands were moved out of their places." What is the only thing that can do that? You know, something that's very destructive, like an atomic bomb. So, brothers and sisters, we got to get it right. We got to get it right. And whatever errors that a lot of these camps are teaching, we got to study this truth for ourselves. We can't be slaves to men. You know, God tells us not to follow after the traditions of men, but we have to follow the scriptures. All right, 2nd Esdras 13, starting with verse 40. Those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Hosea the king, whom Salmanassar the king of Assyria led away captive. And he carried them over the waters, which is Euphrates. We're going to talk about that later on. And so came they into another land. Verse 41. But they took counsel among themselves that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country where never mankind dwelt. Now, a lot of your false tribe chart sayers will say because of this, they went into a land where never man dwelt, means that they came to America. But I'm going to show you from the Bible that there were already people in all the continents. Now, there were places on different continents where man never dwelt. And I'm going to give you a precept to that in Jeremiah. But there were people dwelling all over the continents from the scriptures, because it talks about that in the scripture in the very beginning in Genesis. There were people already here. So a lot of these false tribe chart sayers will try to argue with you and say, well, there was nobody here in America, and this is where they came to. There are people in Africa. Well, I'm going to show you from the Bible there were other places that never man dwelt before. All right, so let's get a precept to 2nd Esdras chapter 13 and verse 41. Remember, last verse I read was where never man dwelt. So let's see where if there was any other places where no man dwelt. All right, so let's look at Jeremiah 2:6, and it says, "Neither saw they where is the Lord that brought us up out of the land of Egypt, that led us through the wilderness, through a land of deserts and of pits, through a land of drought and of the shadow of death, through a land that man passed through, that no man passed through." And listen to this, "and where no man dwelt." So wait a minute now. I thought these northern tribes came to America. I thought the only place that nobody didn't dwell was America. So it shows you right here that there were places in Africa where no man dwelt. Now, we're going to get some precepts to people being spread out to the four corners of the earth or all over the earth prior to the Syrian rule, because there were people already in the different continents. All right, let's see if anybody dwelt upon the face of the earth prior to the Assyrian rule. Now, mind you, this was, after the flood to the Assyrian captivity of the Israelites. It was about almost 3,000 years. So for those sayers that like to say that support those false tribes, like to say that those 10 tribes came over here to America on ships and there were nobody over here in America, is a lie. Because I'm about to show you from the scriptures that it specifically says that God populated the whole earth, and this was 3,000 years before the Assyrian captivity. So let's look at Genesis 9. I'm going to read verse 18 and 19. And it says, "And the sons of Noah that went forth of the ark were Shem and Ham and Japheth. And Ham is the father of Canaan. These are the three sons Noah, and of them was the whole earth overspread." There we go. It says it right there. The whole earth was overspread. It didn't say certain continent or this part of the continent and this continent was excluded. It said the whole earth was overspread. Let's get another witness. Genesis chapter 11. We're going to read verse 8. And it says, "So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth." It didn't say parts of the earth. It said all the earth. And they left off to build a city. Read it again. "So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth. And they left off to build the city." The Bible is clear. There was people already dwelling upon the face of the earth. Didn't no northern 10 tribes come over here to America. These people who are claiming to be Israel, that these camps are teaching, is false. And they're causing a great sin in Israel. Let's get another one. This is coming from the book of Acts, chapter 17 and verse 26. And it says, "And have made of one blood all nations of men, for to dwell on all the face of the earth, and hath determined the times before appointed, and the bounds of their habitation." So the reason why I'm reading these scriptures to you, because you have these false tribe chart sayers that will try to tell you that there was nobody in America when they came over. So their argument was there was nobody here. That's why they came over here to America, because nobody was here. But I just showed you through scriptures that was a lie. So if anybody comes and tell you that supporting this false tribe chart, they tell you that no, there was nobody here in America. You got scriptures to show them. You can show them from the scriptures that there were people. God populated the earth. Let's go back to Esdras, the book of Esdras, 2nd Esdras, chapter 13, and we're gonna cover the next three verses, starting with verse 42. "That they might there keep their statutes, which they never kept in their own land." Verse 43. "And they entered into Euphrates by the narrow places of the river." In verse 44. "For the Most High then showed signs for them, and held still the flood till they were passed over." All right, so let's break down verse 43 in 2nd Esdras 13. And it says, "And they entered into Euphrates by the narrow places of the river." Now notice it says narrow places of the river. Now I have three pictures on the screen. Just take a look at those, and you will see for yourself how narrow the Euphrates rivers is in some places. And you can do a Google research on it. You can see that there's been a history of some portions of the Euphrates even drying up during drought seasons. So look at that really closely, because it kills me when people will try to say they came over on boats as though they crossed over the Euphrates on boats. In some places it's so narrow that you don't even need boats. And so to show you that God sent his children across Euphrates, they were going into Africa. Because remember, Assyrian had seized them, so they were actually captivity in Assyria. So they had to go all the way from Assyria, which is now located in Iraq, all the way from Assyria across the Euphrates, across their land and into Africa. So it would take a while. So that right there, that false theory is destroyed because it shows you right here in the scriptures that they crossed over in the Euphrates on foot. Verse 44, for the Most High then showed signs for them and held still the flood till they were passed over. Now I want to tell you that the ocean does not flood. So when these false sayers say they came over the ocean, they like to use this verse to say that God heals still the floods. Well, how could the ocean flood? It's a big mass body of water. The ocean does not flood. And I already showed you in the previous verses that they crossed over in the narrow paths of the Euphrates. And we're going to see where this is going because they're constantly trying to justify that these 10 northern tribes came over to America, when in reality that they didn't, that this chart was made up by a man. So therefore they have to come up with things and theories on how the northern tribes got here to America, which they didn't. And we're gonna prove that from scriptures. Let's look at verse 45, 2nd Ezra 13. It says, for through that country there was a great way to go, namely of a year and a half, and the same region is called Azareth. Now notice in verse 45 it says through that country. What country are they talking about? That's the key word. For through that country, the country of their captivity, Assyria. Now if you look at the map, and you can download, you can go online and look at other maps as well too. But if you look where Iraq is, that's claimed to know that was the area of ancient Syria, which is now called Iraq. Now that's where the Syrian captivity of our people was in those days. And so when they left, they had to go outside from that country. And by the way, the word Azareth is pertaining to the Arabian area. And you can look that up too. And I'll have something here on the screen that you can see it. But Azareth is referring to the region of that area of their captivity. So they had to go out of Assyria, cross through the desert, cross over the Euphrates, and then cross all the way in Africa and continue through Africa. And now it said, if you read at the end of verse 45, it says that namely of a year. Well, let me read it again. It says, for through that country there was a great way to go. A great way to go. And that's true. They had a long way to go. It says namely of a year and a half. And the same region is called Azareth. All right, so from that area that they left is Azareth. So Azareth also is talking about some countries in Africa. Oh, it's that whole region. Because back in those ancient days, those regions were pretty much in the same location. So to take that long, when the Bible says it took about a year and a half, you got to understand this. When Israel traveled, when they traveled together or migrated somewhere, they didn't do it overnight. It took them a long time. Why? Because they had children, women, older men, pregnant women. They had to stop and rest. And sometimes they would rest for like months at a time. They had to establish some things. And it's all through the Bible. You can read for yourself. And I would encourage you all to research this. But Israel always had a habit of migrating to places whenever they were oppressed. And it didn't take them 3 days, 5 days. It took them years sometimes. So to say that they came over to America, why would they want to come over to America where people don't look like them? The best place for them to go is to Africa. Guess what? The Africans are black like them, so they can blend in. That's always been the case. Even when Joseph and Mary had to flee, well, guess where they flee to? Right there in Africa. Why? Because they blended in. Simple and plain. I mean, it's common sense. All right, so let's look at this word Azareth. Here you will see a Jewish dictionary, and it states as this: Azareth. Columbus identified America with this land by K. Serling. And the book is called Christopher Columbus. Now, I got this book. Well, actually, I got the digital version, and it says in the book it's page 15, but in the digital part, it's around page 50. Now, I'm going to read to you what it says because I'm going to show you that this Jewish definition is inaccurate. And see, a lot of people don't want to do their research and go figure this stuff out and try to see what the truth is. So I'm gonna show you the title cover of this book here, and then I'm gonna go ahead and read it to you. Here it is right here. It says, "He, Christopher Columbus, was also very fond of reading the Bible and the fourth book of Ezra." Read that again. The fourth book of Ezra was probably written by a Jew who lived outside of Palestine. See, the word Ezra is not even in this book. So these people who are trying to hold on to this false tribe chart saying that Christopher Columbus referred to it as America is false because it's not even in here, the word. And you can do a search in this book on the digital part for Ezra, and it would not pull anything up on Ezra. So this is all inaccurate. And the people who wrote this stuff and the people who's pushing this stuff, they know it. I just showed you in a Jewish dictionary that Ezra is not even pertaining in this book called Christopher Columbus, like people are trying to push. So let's go back to 2nd Ezra 13, and we're going to read verses 46 and 47. It says, "Then dwelt they there until the latter time, and now when they shall begin to come." Verse 47, "The highest shall stay the springs of the stream again, that they may go through. Therefore sawest thou the multitude with peace." Let's get a precept to 2nd Ezra 13:46. So 46, we read in 46 that they stayed there until a later time. So let's find out what this later time is talking about. And let's go to Isaiah chapter 11, and we're going to read verses 15 and 16. And it says, verse 15, "And the Lord shall utterly destroy the tongue of the Egyptian sea, and with his mighty wind shall he shake his hand over the river, and shall smite in the 7 streams, and make men go over dry shod." Verse 16, "And there shall be an highway for the remnant," read that again, "a remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria, like as it was to Israel in the day that he came up out of the land of Egypt." So we read in verse 46 in 2nd Ezra that they stayed there until a latter time. Isaiah chapter 11 verses 15 and 16 is the precept to 2nd Ezra 13:46, because that's where they remain, and that's where they still going to remain. They're still scattered all through Africa. Now, I'm not saying that there's some northern tribes here in America, but the majority of the northern tribes are still scattered throughout Africa, Asia, and all the Middle Eastern areas. There is no proof of the 10 tribes coming over here to America on ships. Bible facts. Get more proof of where the 10 tribes are going to be gathered from. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 11. And we're going to read verses 11 and 12. Starting with verse 11. It says, "And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall set his hand again the second time to recover," it says the second time, "to recover the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria, and from Egypt, and from Pathros, and from Cush, and from Elam, and from Shinar, and from Hamath, and from the islands of the sea." These are Mediterraneans. Now, notice those places I just read in the scriptures. Those are countries in Africa. Those northern tribes are going to be gathered from those areas. Let's look at verse 12. And he shall set up an ensign for the nations, and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel, and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the 4 corners of the earth. So it makes a distinction between Israel and Judah, because remember, those are the 2 tribes that were split. You had the tribes of Judah, and then you had the northern tribe, the southern tribe, which is Judah, and then you had the northern tribes, which consisted of Ephraim and the 10 tribes. So it's clear where God says that he's going to gather, where he's going to gather them from. And it's clear that Judah was dispersed throughout the 4 corners. Judah is everywhere. So especially throughout South America and the Northern Americans. So when we look at this, we can clearly see where our people are going to be gathered from. I mentioned earlier how God, in His anger to punish the other nations, how He is known for drying up the rivers. I have a list of precepts on the screen for you, so just take this time, get those scriptures down, and look them up for yourself. And there's a lot of scriptures in the Bible that talks about that, and I put that on there so you can see how God dries up the rivers in His anger against the other nations. I really hope this has been an edifying lesson for you. I wanted to really show you in the scriptures that the northern tribes, the 10 northern tribes, did not come over here to America like some of these camps are teaching. And the scripture is plain and simple. And we had saw earlier that where these 10 tribes went to, they went over to Africa, and they're still there today, spread out in Africa and parts of Asia, Middle East. They're still there. And so, for those false tribe chart sayers that want to push these lies, I would challenge them to go back to the scriptures and revisit that. Now, we have Negroes in the regions of South America, like Mexico, Puerto Rico, Colombia, all through South America. We have Negroes out there. North America, those are the dispersed of Judah. They're not so-called Ephraim, Issachar, whatever you want to call them, of the northern tribes. Those are the dispersed of Judah. And these people, these same people, these Negroes, they're at the bottom. The natives don't even want anything to do with them. The natives don't even associate themselves with these people. They get treated just like us, and they fit all the curses, not just some of them, all the curses. Now, when we talk about the natives of Mexico, the Aztec Mexicans and your Puerto Ricans, all your native folks throughout South America that these camps are teaching that are Israelites is a lie. And I'm going to do another lesson. The next lesson is going to be part 3, and it's going to be about the curses. I'm going to show you that these so-called Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, Native Americans that they're pushing that are Israelites do not fit the curses. Only the Negroes fit the curses. You see, the Israelites were Negroes then, from our forefather Jacob to the 12 tribes. Until this present day, we are still Negroes. God does not change. So for those camps who are pushing this false tribe chart, you're causing a great sin in Israel, and you're marrying foreign women, and you're pushing lies. We got to wake up. We got to wake up, because God is going to hold these leaders responsible for what they're doing. Sooner or later, these leaders who are pushing this false tribe chart are going to have to wake up one day and realize that they've been lying to their flocks. And God doesn't play games with that. That's not something to play around with. This is serious. Because what you're doing is you're taking an heritage that don't belong to you, and you're taking a heritage that doesn't belong to other people, and you're taking our heritage away, and you're giving it to foreigners. You're giving it to people who are not even Israelites. And you're marrying their women, and you're causing the followers to follow that same lie. So something has to be done. This is why I believe that God has used me to combat these lies, and I'm going to continue to do so. And with this being said, I say shalom.